My life had always been governed by predictable routines, until that Thursday night, when a simple mix-up with a hotel room changed everything forever. The Palazzo Imperial Hotel breathed opulence, from the grand lobby to the corridors lined with Italian marble. I was there for work, a digital marketing conference that promised to be as monotonous as my life had been for the past few months. After the divorce, I'd thrown myself into my job as a means of escape, and this trip was just another flight from the loneliness that had settled into my empty apartment. The elevator ascended silently to the 12th floor. My fingers trembled slightly, a side effect of too much coffee and accumulated exhaustion. The key card felt heavy in my purse as I walked down the quiet hallway, counting the numbers on the doors. 1247, 1248, 1249. I swiped the card in the lock of room 1250. A green light blinked, and I pushed open the heavy mahogany door. The first thing I noticed was the masculine scent. Woody, sophisticated, definitely not the neutral fragrance of an empty hotel room. The second was the lit candles on the coffee table, creating an intimate and unexpectedly welcoming atmosphere. The third was the man. He stood with his back to me, looking out the panoramic window that offered a breathtaking view of the illuminated city skyline. He was tall, with broad shoulders under an impeccably tailored black dress shirt. When he turned, our eyes met, and I felt as if time had stopped. His eyes were the color of espresso, deep, intense, almost hypnotic. Strong features composed a face that looked as though it had been sculpted by an artist. A defined jaw, lips that hinted at both tenderness and danger. There was something magnetic about him, a presence that filled the entire space without him even moving. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, his deep voice echoing in the silence of the room. There was no aggression, just a statement heavy with tension. My heart hammered against my ribs. I'm so sorry, there must be a mistake. This is room 1250, isn't it?" I held up the keycard with a shaky hand. His eyes scanned my face with an intensity that made me blush. "You're in the right room. I'm the one who shouldn't have been so certain I'd be alone." The way he said it, with a mix of curiosity and caution, intrigued me. "I don't understand." "Of course you don't." He approached with measured steps, like a predator studying its prey. "The question is, who sent you?" "Sent me? No one sent me. I booked this room for the marketing conference at the hotel." My voice came out higher than usual. Alessandro, I would only learn his name hours later, stopped a few feet from me. His proximity was unsettling and, at the same time, magnetically appealing. "Marketing," he repeated, as if the word were absurdly out of place. "And you always show up in strangers' rooms at 10 o'clock at night carrying a bag that clearly doesn't match your story?" I glanced at my work bag, a simple black briefcase I'd used for years. "Are you implying I'm some kind of spy?" For the first time, he offered something that might have been a smile. "It would be an interesting cover. Marketing executive lost in the wrong hotel." "Wrong hotel?" Realization hit me. Wait, what hotel is this? "The Palazzo Imperial, Executive Tower." I'm supposed to be at the Palazzo Imperial, Corporate Tower. I felt my face flush with embarrassment. "The names are almost identical." Alessandro crossed his arms, still studying me. "And how would you explain the key card just happening to work on the right door?" I had no answer for that. The coincidence was too unsettling to ignore. "Maybe," he continued, taking another step closer, "fate decided it was time for us to meet." The way he said it, with a tone that blended amusement and something deeper, made my stomach flip in a way it hadn't in a very long time. "I don't believe in fate," I replied, but my voice lacked the conviction I was trying to project. "Neither do I," Alessandro said, stopping right in front of me. "I believe in opportunities, and this one..." His eyes roamed my face again, lingering on my lips. "This one is quite unexpected." I should have left right then. Any sensible person would have apologized and gone to find their correct room. But there was something about this man. The way he looked at me, as if he could see through all the masks I wore day to day, that kept me rooted to the spot. "Are you going to stand there all night, or will you have a drink while we figure out how to solve this situation?" He gestured toward the makeshift bar in the corner of the room, where a bottle of red wine was breathing next to 2 crystal glasses. 2 glasses, I observed. "Were you expecting someone?" "I was." His answer was deliberately vague. "But it seems plans have changed." Against all my self-preservation instincts, I accepted. Alessandro poured the wine with precise, elegant movements. When our fingers brushed as he passed me the glass, I felt an electric shock run up my arm. "What's your name?" he asked, settling into the leather armchair across from the sofa where I sat. "Morgan." I didn't lie, but I didn't offer my last name either. "Morgan." He repeated my name as if tasting its flavor. "Italian?" "My grandmother, and you?" "Alessandro." A pause. "Also Italian, also from my grandmother." We laughed, and for a moment the tension eased. But when his eyes met mine again, the intensity returned, magnified. "Been in marketing long?" The question seemed casual, but I could tell he was analyzing every word of my answer. 8 years, you? I returned the question, curious about what kind of work required such a sophisticated hotel suite and such obvious caution. Family business, imports, mostly. The answer was too vague to be the whole truth, but I didn't press. There was something in the air, an undercurrent of danger that made every moment more electrifying. "And does this family business require you to be so careful with strangers who show up in your room?" Alessandro tilted his head, studying me. "My family values discretion. It's not always easy to know people's true intentions." "That must be lonely," I said, surprising myself with my own boldness. "Sometimes." He leaned forward, closing the distance. "And you, Morgan? What kind of loneliness brought you here tonight?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. How could he see through me so easily? "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do." His voice was soft, almost hypnotic. "It's written in your eyes. The same loneliness I recognize because I carry my own." I drank more wine than I should have, trying to buy time to process the intensity of the moment. "Do you always analyze strangers this way?" "You're not just any stranger." The statement was delivered with such certainty that I felt my heart race. "From the moment you walked through that door, there's something about you that intrigues me." "Being intriguing can be dangerous," I murmured, not knowing why. The best feelings always are. The silence that followed was charged with unspoken possibilities. I should leave, I knew it. But when Alessandro stood and held out his hand to me, I took it without hesitation. "Come," he said, "I want to show you something." He led me to the window, where the city stretched out like a sea of twinkling lights. His presence behind me was warm, protective, and yet disturbingly intimate. "It's beautiful," I commented, referring to the view. "Yes," he agreed, but when I turned, I realized he wasn't looking at the city. He was looking at me. The moment stretched like a taut cord about to snap. There was an unasked question hanging in the air between us, a silent invitation that could change everything. That's when my phone rang, shattering the spell. "Excuse me," I mumbled, seeing my assistant's name on the screen. "Hello, Marina." "Morgan, thank God I found you. There was a problem with your reservation. You're not in the right hotel. You need to go to the Palazzo Imperial Corporate Tower, a couple of blocks away." My blood ran cold. Reality hit like a splash of cold water. "Okay, got it. I'll sort it out now." I hung up and turned to Alessandro, who was watching every nuance of my expression. "Trouble?" he asked. "I really have to go. The hotel—" I hesitated, not wanting to break the magic of the moment, but knowing there was no alternative. "You have to go," he finished, his tone unreadable. "Alessandro, You don't have to explain." He stepped back, creating distance between us again. It was an interesting mistake, but mistakes always come to an end. There was something in his posture, a practiced resignation, that made me think he was used to people leaving. "It wasn't just a mistake," I said impulsively. Our eyes met one last time, and in that moment, I felt like I was letting something important, maybe even unique, slip away. "If it wasn't," he said, pulling a card from his pocket and offering it to me, "then maybe our paths will cross again." The card was simple, elegant. Just a name, Alessandro Moretti, and a phone number. Moretti? The last name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. "Until next time, Morgan from marketing." There was irony in his voice, but also something that might have been hope. The next 3 days were torture disguised as normalcy. I attended the panels, I networked, I smiled at corporate dinners, but my mind was constantly back in that room, with those espresso-colored eyes and the feeling of having lost something vital. Alessandro's card burned in my pocket like an unanswered invitation. On the final night of the conference, I couldn't resist any longer. I called the number. "Morgan?" He answered on the second ring, as if he'd been waiting. "How did you know it was me?" Intuition. A pause. Or hope. My heart leaped. "Alessandro, have dinner with me tonight, please." The way he said please, as if my answer was the most important thing in the world, melted all my resistance. "Where?" "Il Paradiso. Do you know it?" I knew it by reputation. An exclusive restaurant frequented by the city's elite. Reservations had to be made months in advance. "How did you get a table?" "I have my ways. 8 o'clock? I'll be there." I spent the next 2 hours in a state of controlled panic, trying to decide what to wear. I finally settled on a simple but elegant black dress that highlighted my figure without being too revealing. Il Paradiso exceeded my expectations. An intimate atmosphere, soft lighting, and an understated elegance that screamed exclusivity. The maitre d' led me to a secluded table, clearly the best in the house. Alessandro was already waiting. He wore a navy blue suit that brought out his dark eyes. When he stood to greet me, I again felt that magnetic pull I'd experienced 3 nights before. "You look beautiful," he said, gently kissing my hand. "Thank you. This place is a bit much," he smiled. My family has a flair for the Italian drama. Over dinner, we talked about everything and nothing: art, travel, books, movies. Alessandro was cultured, intelligent, with a subtle sense of humor that made me laugh genuinely. But there were layers to him. I noticed it every time certain questions made his eyes shudder slightly, every time he deflected, when the conversation veered too close to his personal life. "Can I ask you something personal?" I said, emboldened by the wine and the growing intimacy. "You can try. Why were you so suspicious of me that night? I mean, besides the obvious strangeness of the situation." Alessandro swirled the wine in his glass, considering his answer. "My family, we live a kind of life that attracts unwanted attention. It's not always easy to distinguish genuine coincidences from manufactured situations." "What kind of attention?" "The kind that makes it necessary to verify that someone who appears unexpectedly in your room wasn't sent by people with bad intentions." The seriousness in his voice made me realize he wasn't exaggerating. "And now, do you still think I was sent by someone?" His eyes found mine. "Now I think you're more dangerous than any enemy my family could have." "Dangerous?" "To me, to the person I've been." He leaned across the table, closing the distance between us. "You make me want things I had decided were impossible." My breathing grew shallow. "What kind of things?" "Normalcy, someone to share quiet mornings with, someone who looks at me and sees just Alessandro, not the weight I carry on my shoulders." Before I could respond, I noticed a commotion at the restaurant's entrance. 3 men in suits walked in and positioned themselves strategically. Alessandro caught my expression and turned discreetly. His posture changed instantly. His muscles tensed, his face hardened. "We need to go now." "What? Why?" "Don't ask questions, just trust me." Something in his tone, an urgency that brooked no argument, made me obey. He motioned to the waiter with an almost imperceptible gesture, left cash on the table, and led me by the hand toward a back exit. "Alessandro, you're scaring me." "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought you here, not tonight." We reached the parking lot behind the restaurant. A black car was waiting, engine running. Alessandro opened the door for me. "Get in." "Wait, whose car is this? How did you know we'd be here?" "Morgan, please, I'll explain everything later. Just get in the car." The hesitation in his eyes, as if he were fighting with himself, convinced me more than his words. I got in. The driver was an older man who greeted Alessandro with a respectful nod. "Home, Don Alessandro?" "Don Alessandro." The title echoed in my mind like an alarm bell. As the car moved through the city streets, Alessandro took my hand. "I know you have questions." "A few." I tried to keep my voice steady. "The first would be, who exactly are you, Alessandro Moretti?" He closed his eyes for a moment, as if making an irreversible decision. "I am the heir to the Moretti family, and before you ask what that means," he paused, looking at me directly. "It means I live in a world where romantic dinners can turn into dangerous situations, where people I care about can become targets. The reality finally crystallized. Alessandro Moretti, the Moretti family. That's why the name had sounded familiar. I'd read about them in the papers, one of the most powerful business organizations in the city. The mob, I whispered. The family, he corrected. With diverse interests and traditional methods. Oh my God. The magnitude of the situation hit me like an avalanche. Morgan, look at me. His voice was soft but insistent. I'm the same person you met in that room, the same man you talked to about art and literature tonight. The only difference is that now you know why I was so cautious. I looked at his hands holding mine. Hands that had touched me with tenderness, that had held a wine glass with elegance. Hands that, I now knew, carried responsibilities I could barely imagine. The men in the restaurant, rivals, or just people sending a message, it's not always easy to tell the difference. And me? You're a complication now. His honesty was both brutal and refreshing. Because anyone close to me becomes a vulnerability. The car pulled up in front of an elegant high-rise in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city. Is this your apartment? I asked. One of them. Alessandro got out and walked around the car to open my door. Morgan, you can leave right now. I can have Marco take you to your hotel. You can pretend these last few days never happened. I stood on the sidewalk, looking at him. The streetlight cast shadows across his face, accentuating the tension he carried. And what if I don't want to pretend? Then, he said, offering his hand, you need to understand that from this moment on, nothing will ever be simple again. I took his hand. Alessandro's apartment was a reflection of his personality, elegant, sophisticated, but with a coolness that suggested it was more of a refuge than a home. Curated artwork, designer furniture, a panoramic view of the city. Everything was perfect, almost impersonal. Drink, he offered, heading to the bar. Alessandro. My voice stopped him mid-motion. I don't want a drink. I want the truth. All of it. He turned, and for a moment, I saw something vulnerable in his eyes. The truth is a dangerous thing, Morgan. More dangerous than being here without knowing what I'm getting myself into? He considered that, then nodded. Sit down. I settled onto the leather sofa while he remained standing, as if he needed the distance to tell his story. The Moretti family has controlled a significant portion of the business mafia in this city for 3 generations. My grandfather built the empire, my father consolidated it, and he paused. I inherited the responsibilities and the enemies. What kind of business? Officially, imports, restaurants, real estate, a few tech companies. He paused again. Unofficially, let's just say we offer protection services and facilitate certain transactions that require discretion. It was an elegant way of describing activities I preferred not to probe too deeply. And the men in the restaurant? The Rossini family, old rivals. There's a turf war that's been dragging on for months. A dispute over what? Alessandro came closer, sitting beside me but leaving enough space so I wouldn't feel pressured. The import contracts, the usual dance for power. His eyes met mine. Morgan, you need to understand. I am not an ordinary man. I can't offer you a normal life. Define normal. Carefree dinners, walks in the park, introducing you to friends without fearing I'm putting them in danger. His voice carried a deep sadness. The woman by my side automatically becomes a target. And what if she decides the risk is worth it? The question hung in the air between us. Alessandro studied me as if trying to decipher a complex puzzle. Why? He finally asked. Why would you take that risk? The answer came more easily than I expected. Because for the last 3 days, I felt more alive than I have in the last 3 years. Because when you look at me, I see possibilities I thought had died with my marriage. Because I took a deep breath. Because when I'm with you, I don't feel invisible. Alessandro closed his eyes as if my words were physically painful. Morgan. No. I stood up, walking toward him. Don't tell me it's impossible. Don't tell me I'm naive. Tell me what you feel. When he opened his eyes, the intensity in them almost knocked me over. I feel like you're the first person in years who has made me forget, even for a moment, the weight I carry. I feel like I could get completely lost in you and not care about the consequences. He stood now very close. And that terrifies me. Why? Because men like me don't deserve women like you. Because I will inevitably put you in danger. Because... The sound of his phone interrupted whatever he was about to say. Alessandro glanced at the screen, and his face hardened. I have to take this. Okay. Don Alessandro. His voice had changed completely, cold, authoritative. When? How many? Understood. He hung up and turned to me, the transformation complete. You need to leave. Now. What happened? Morgan, this isn't the time for explanations. Marco is coming up to get you. Alessandro, tell me what's going on. He gripped my shoulders, his eyes burning with intensity. The Rossinis hit one of our warehouses. They're forcing a confrontation. His voice was urgent. If they find out about you, let me help. No! The violence in his voice startled me. This is exactly why this can't work. I can't protect you and handle family business at the same time. The doorbell rang. That's Marco, Alessandro said, heading for the door. But when he opened it, it wasn't his driver. It was two men I didn't recognize, and their expressions were not friendly. Don Alessandro, the taller one said, with an accent I couldn't place. You need to come with us. It wasn't an invitation, the second one added, discreetly showing something in his coat pocket. Alessandro tensed visibly. Leave the woman out of this. The woman comes with. Insurance, you'll behave. My blood ran cold. Suddenly, the situation stopped being a romantic drama and became something genuinely dangerous. Alessandro, I whispered. Stay calm, he said without turning around. We'll handle this. But in his eyes, when he finally looked at me, I saw something that terrified me. Fear. Alessandro was afraid, and something told me it wasn't for himself. Andiamo, the taller man said. And just like that, in a matter of minutes, I was escorted out of Alessandro's elegant apartment, a prisoner of people I didn't know, for reasons I didn't fully understand, beside a man who had just confessed feelings that changed everything. The elevator descended in a dead silence, carrying us toward a destination I dreaded to discover. The car waiting for us wasn't like Marco's. This one was bigger, more intimidating, with windows so dark it was impossible to see inside. The two men led us with an efficiency that suggested they were practiced in situations like this. Alessandro held my hand the entire ride, a gesture that should have been comforting but only heightened my anxiety. His thumb traced soft circles on my palm, an attempt to calm me, or perhaps himself. Where are we going? I asked quietly. Neutral territory, one of the men answered, without turning around. Don Rossini wants a word. Alessandro said nothing, but I saw his jaw clench. We pulled up in front of a chic nightclub downtown, the kind of place featured in lifestyle magazines, frequented by celebrities and socialites. A perfect front for meetings that required discretion. We were led through a side entrance and up a flight of stairs to a private lounge. The decor was opulent. Red velvet, crystal chandeliers, a long mahogany table dominating the center of the room. An older man was seated at the head of the table, perfectly coiffed gray hair, an impeccable suit, and a presence that commanded immediate respect. This was clearly Don Rossini. Alessandro, he said, rising, at last. Don Rossini. Alessandro's voice was controlled, respectful, but not subservient. And this must be the reason you've been so distracted lately. Don Rossini's eyes appraised me in a way that made me want to hide behind Alessandro. Morgan has no part in this, Alessandro said, taking a step forward. Ah, but she does. Don Rossini gestured for us to sit. Everything is a part of it when it comes to family, wouldn't you agree? We sat on the opposite side of the table. Alessandro kept a protective hand on the small of my back. What do you want, Don Rossini? Straight to the point. I admire that. The older man poured wine into 3 glasses. I want the port, Alessandro, the import contracts. And I want your guarantee that you will not interfere with our arrangements, with the unions. Impossible. I thought you might say that. Don Rossini leaned forward. That's why I brought an incentive. He looked pointedly at me. She has nothing to do with our business, Alessandro repeated, his voice tighter. No, then why were you protecting her at the restaurant tonight? Why is she here, in your private apartment and not at one of your usual establishments? The implication in his words made me blush. Clearly, Don Rossini knew more about Alessandro's life than I imagined. She's different, Alessandro said. Exactly. Don Rossini smiled, but there was no warmth in the gesture. She's different because she means something to you, something the others never did. I felt Alessandro tense beside me. Let me explain how this will work, Don Rossini continued. You have 48 hours to give me an answer. You either accept my terms, or your lovely Morgan might discover just how uncomfortable it can be to be associated with the families. The air in the room grew thick as molasses. I was being used as a bargaining chip in a game I didn't fully comprehend. You can't do this, Alessandro said, his words laced with a controlled rage that frightened me. I can and I will. Don Rossini sipped his wine calmly. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to hand over the contracts now. In that case, you can both leave tonight and forget this conversation ever happened. Alessandro was silent for a long moment. I could feel the internal battle he was waging, between protecting me and protecting his family's interests. I need to speak with my consiglio, he said finally. Naturally, but the signorina stays as our guest until we have an answer. No. The word came out of Alessandro like a contained roar. Alessandro, I intervened for the first time. It's okay. They both looked at me, surprised. It's not okay, Alessandro said, turning fully toward me. Morgan, you don't understand what you're saying. I understand. Perfectly. My voice was steadier than I expected. I understand that I'm being used to pressure you. I understand that Don Rossini believes keeping me here will force you into a decision that will hurt your family. I looked directly at the older man. What you don't understand, Don Rossini, is that I am not just a pawn in your game. Don Rossini raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Go on, signorina. I've worked in market strategy for 8 years. I know an unbalanced negotiation when I see one. I took a deep breath, praying my courage wouldn't fail me. You're asking Alessandro to surrender assets worth millions in exchange for my safety. That's not a negotiation, it's extortion. Morgan, Alessandro whispered, but I held up a hand. More than that, I continued. You're assuming Alessandro will choose to protect me over his family, but a man who would sacrifice his own family for a woman he's known for a week wouldn't be the kind of man worth being sacrificed for. The silence in the lounge was deafening. Interesting, Don Rossini said slowly. And what do you propose then, signorina strategist? A counter-proposal. I glanced at Alessandro, who was watching me with a mixture of awe and terror. You clearly have a dispute over territory. You are both intelligent men who have built empires based on strategy, not just brute force. There has to be a way to divide the resources without one of you losing everything. Are you suggesting a partnership? Don Rossini's voice held genuine curiosity. I'm suggesting you stop acting like children fighting over a toy and start thinking like businessmen. My own boldness surprised me. The port is big enough for both of you. The import contracts can be divided by sector. As for the unions, I paused, looking between the two men. I imagine it would be more profitable for both of you to work together rather than trying to destroy each other. Don Rossini leaned back in his chair, studying me with new eyes. You have courage, ragazza. You're either very smart or very foolish. Probably a little of both, I admitted. Alessandro took my hand under the table, squeezing it as if to transfer strength, or perhaps to warn me to stop. And what would your role be in this cooperation? Don Rossini asked. None, my answer was immediate. This is not my war, this is not my world, but I am also not just a tool to manipulate Alessandro. Don Rossini looked at Alessandro, who remained tense but attentive. Your friend here has chosen an unusual woman. She is not my property to be chosen, Alessandro said. She is a person who makes her own choices. Evidently, Don Rossini finished his wine. Very well, Signorina Morgan. I will consider your suggestions. Alessandro, you have 24 hours, not 48, but in consideration of your companion's eloquence, you may both leave tonight. And her protection, Alessandro's question was blunt. While negotiations are ongoing, she is under the protection of both families, a temporary non-aggression pact, if you will. Alessandro considered this for a moment, then nodded. We have a deal. We left the club in silence. The car waiting for us this time was Alessandro's. Marco was behind the wheel, looking visibly relieved to see us. Home, Don Alessandro? Home. During the ride, neither of us spoke. My adrenaline was beginning to fade, leaving room for the full realization of what had just happened. I had negotiated with a mob boss. I had put my life on the line to protect the interests of a man I had known for less than a week. It was completely insane, and strangely, I felt more alive than ever. Alessandro's apartment felt different when we returned. The same art, the same elegant furniture, but now charged with the weight of everything that had been said and unsaid between us. "You were incredibly brave tonight," Alessandro said, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. "And incredibly foolish." "Thank you, I think." He sat beside me on the sofa, offering me a glass. Our hands brushed during the handoff, and I felt that familiar electric current once again. "Morgan, do you understand what you did tonight? Not just with Don Rossini, but—" He stopped, running a hand through his hair. "You've stepped into my world. Officially, there's no going back after this." "Who said I want to go back?" His eyes searched mine, looking for any sign of hesitation. "My life isn't like the movies, Morgan. It isn't glamorous. It's constant responsibility, difficult decisions, people who depend on me. It's looking over my shoulder. It's not being able to trust easily. It's loneliness," I finished. "You said so yourself." "Yes." "And what if I said I don't mind the loneliness, as long as it's shared?" Alessandro set his glass on the table and turned to face me completely. "Why would you do that? Why would you choose this life?" The question forced me to look deep inside myself, to examine feelings I had been avoiding. Because in the last 4 days, you've reminded me of who I was before I lost myself in a marriage that made me smaller. Because when you look at me, I see a reflection of a woman I thought I'd lost forever. I paused, gathering my courage. And because despite all the danger and complications, when I'm with you, I feel whole. Alessandro closed his eyes, as if my words were both a blessing and a curse. "It won't be easy. The best things never are. There will be nights I can't come home on time, meetings I can't explain, people who will try to use you to get to me. And there will be mornings we wake up together, intimate, dinners where we can just be Alessandro and Morgan, moments of peace stolen from the chaos." He opened his eyes, and what I saw in them made my heart pound. "Are you sure?" In response, I moved closer to him on the sofa. "Alessandro Moretti, are you officially asking me to stay? I'm asking you to be my partner, my equal, my—" He hesitated on the word. "Your what?" "My anchor," he said finally. "Then yes." When Alessandro kissed me, it was with the intensity of a man who had been lost and had finally found his way home. His lips were soft but insistent, his hands cupping my face as if I were too precious to be real. "I can't promise you a normal life," he murmured against my lips. "I don't want normal," I answered. "I want you." The arrangement between the Moretti and Rossini families worked better than anyone could have predicted. The territorial split I proposed that night created a lucrative cooperation that benefited both sides. Alessandro often jokes that he should hire me as his official consultant. My life changed in ways I never imagined possible. I moved into Alessandro's apartment, but we also decorated an office where I can work remotely for my marketing clients. He insisted on extra security. Marco now accompanies me to important meetings, but I gradually learned to navigate his world without losing my own identity. Some nights he comes home late, the tension in his shoulders only easing when I hold him. Other nights we have dinner by candlelight and talk about books, dreams, and the future we're building together. I met his family, an intimidating but ultimately welcoming experience. His mother, Sophia, an elegant woman, who immediately took me under her wing and started making not-so-subtle comments about grandchildren. His father, Don Carmine, who watched me for weeks before finally giving me a nod of approval. My own family took longer to accept. When I explained I was dating someone in the import business, my mother just assumed it meant he was very wealthy. Technically, she wasn't wrong. Tonight, Alessandro brought me back to the Palazzo Imperiale, the same hallway where it all began. We stopped in front of room 1250. "Remember?" he asked, smiling. "How could I forget? The night a lost woman found the wrong room." "Or," he said, pulling something from his pocket, "the night fate decided to correct 2 lives that were heading in the wrong direction." When I saw the small velvet box in his hands, my heart stopped. "Alessandro." "Morgan," he said, getting down on one knee right there in the hotel corridor where we met. You turned my life from something I endured into something I celebrate every day. Will you make our agreement permanent? The ring was perfect. Elegant, timeless, exactly like the love we had built. Yes, I answered, barely able to speak through my tears. Yes, I'll be your anchor forever. As he slipped the ring onto my finger, there in the quiet hotel hallway, I knew I had found my place in the world. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was the life I would choose 1,000 times over. Sometimes, the best stories start with the wrong door. Sometimes, getting lost is exactly how we find our way home. And sometimes, a simple mistake turns into the single best decision we ever make.